is, I think this is a beautiful picture of what therapy looks like. There is a shared rhythm that develops between a patient and a therapist when things are going well. That takes on a life of its own. There's a shared subjectivity that's really only understood, experienced near between the therapist and the patient. So this is a great example of what you learned in helping skills, right? This idea of nonverbal rhythmicity, right? When you're able to connect with your patient in a pre-verbal sort of way. But man, isn't that amazing? Without language, just how powerful communication can be, and just how attuned they were to one another about a missing sock. No, I don't know. Who knows what they're talking about, right? Okay. Hey, by the way, I have this PowerPoint. I'm going to send it over to Dr. Fry. He's going to upload it to iTunes U. So you're going to have, we're not going to be able to get to all the slides. But if you're interested in learning more about psychodynamic psychotherapy, you need to become acquainted with the work of Nancy McWilliams. She's written 3 texts that are really great and super accessible. I would start with psychoanalytic psychodiagnosis. That is a foundational text that really outlines how psychoanalytic thinkers approach diagnosis and understanding development. She's also written 2 others. Well, I think I'm not sure if she's written any other texts besides those 3, but numerous articles. Psychoanalytic psychotherapy. This kind of goes over different case examples, and then some of the treatment management issues that come up in any particular case, and then psychoanalytic case conceptualization. And in her case conceptualization, this is where she outlines her distinctives, what she thinks to be as the distinctives of psychodynamic psychotherapy. And if you asked any theorist who's writing in this area, they would probably, for the most part, be in agreement with the tenets that are outlined by McWilliams here. But I won't go through those one by one, but they're there for you to look back on if you're interested. Okay, so I'm trying to decide if I want to incorporate this or not. Did you have a question? Nope, I just heard her laughing, so I don't know if she's not checking it out. Okay. So McWilliams has this great line in understanding diagnosis. It's not a matter of are you nuts or not. It's just how nuts are we, right? In understanding the idiosyncrasies of any human, and in what particular way are you nuts? I love that because I think it really humanizes our experiences, and we're all a little nuts in our own unique ways. So, do I want to talk about this? Do you guys want to know about the levels of development, the neurotic, the borderline, and psychotic spectrum, and kind of how that informs? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, let's start with this. I had a chalk. It's been a long time since I used chalk on a chalkboard. So when it comes to understanding the psychology of an individual, psychodynamic psychotherapists think about development on a spectrum from unhealthy to healthier. And the continuum on one end is psychotic or psychosis, And then on the other end is sort of this healthy neurotic, or maybe you've heard of the term, the worried well. The worried well would sort of exist on this this end of the continuum and in the middle. And this is where actually we get the term, you guys have had psychodiagnosis class, right? Mm-hmm. So you're familiar with borderline personality disorder, right? The term borderline, we actually, in the DSM, they got that term from this understanding of development that was rich within the psychoanalytic or psychodynamic literature. So, this is all outlined, by the way, in McWilliams' book, so what we're not able to go over in depth, if you're interested in looking into it more, it's available to you in that text.
Is that last one neurotic?
Yeah, yep. And I'll go over each one of the stages. Treatment for individuals will differ based on their particular level of development and the specific needs of the individual at each one of those areas. So why is this important, and why do I bring it up in the context of conjoint or couples psychotherapy? In order to help a couple move towards health, engaging in emotional intimacy, there are a few developmental capacities that have to be online. Do you know what those are? You think about healthy couple functioning. What developmental capacities? So when I'm referring to developmental capacities, I'm referring to things like emotional regulation or delayed gratification, something along those lines, that these capacities that come online developmentally. So what capacities need to be available to an individual in order to function well? Go ahead. Yeah.
The ability to put somebody else's needs before your own.
Okay.
Sometimes.
Yeah, right. Being able to, and let me hone in on something that you're saying here. This capacity to mentalize. We'll talk about mentalization. Are you familiar with this term? Peter Fonagy popularized this idea. He's in fact mentalizing. What's it? Do you guys know the name of his form of therapy? Mentalizations, focused therapy, something along those lines. But anyways, he coined this term mentalization. It's this capacity to be able to understand and know how you are coming off to the other individual and how the other individual is holding you in their mind. Healthy couple functioning requires that the individual partners within the relationship can mentalize the experience of their partner. Right? Mm-hmm. It's how you respond flexibly to the needs of your partner. That is a developmental task. Individuals at the psychotic level of development inherently are deficient in mentalization. So if you have an individual who's in heightened, they might live here at the borderline state, but under emotional distress, they can regress to the psychotic state. Your work in marital therapy is probably going to be self-defeating. So this idea of mentalization is an important relational capacity that makes emotional intimacy even possible. What other developmental capacities must an individual in a dyad have in order to create emotional intimacy? Show an empathy, yeah, yep, good.
A degree of understanding of their inner world.
Okay, yep. Yeah, all of those relate to mentalization, right? So you have to be able to, you have to have an understanding of your internal world to mentalize the experience of another, because you're holding them in mind, right? And how are you coming off to them? How are they responding to you?
Would trust fall under that too?
Trust, sure. Yep. That is a relational capacity. capacity and this idea of experiencing safety, and we'll talk about how to cultivate that. The one I'm looking for is emotional regulation. So why do couples come to therapy, or marital therapy? Let's be specific there. What's happening in the relationship typically? What have you guys learned thus far? What are sort of the common reasons why?
Like surface or?
Someone's
Go ahead, just whatever.
someone's under-regulating and one's
Okay.
over-regulating.
People aren't
Okay.
getting their needs met.
People aren't getting their needs met, yes. Maybe over and under regulating. Yeah, go ahead.
Safety and security have been threatened.
Safety and security have been threatened. Boy, you guys must have an EFT therapist for all this EFT language. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah. Or deficits in self-functioning, right? Yeah. Over or under regulated. Yeah, those are all common issues. Now, if you are trying to bring those capacities online, you got to know something about the way their internal world is structured. And this is where McWilliams' work on these different levels of development might be helpful for you. So individuals at the psychotic level of development. So this, think about, do I want to go to this place? I don't know if I do or not. Just out of the interest of time. Okay, I'm going to move on. Individuals are more internally desperate and disorganized at this level. So if you're thinking about diagnostic categories, you might consider an individual who has a chronic and persistent mental illness. So maybe suffers from significant bouts of paranoia or experiences visual and auditory hallucinations, can be deeply, deeply terrified of the experiences of others or even just their place in the world, and often lives in a state of confusion. The defenses that are often employed by individuals at the psychotic level include the following: withdrawal, denial, omnipotent control. I wish I could go into detail on all of these specific defenses, but primitive idealization and devaluation, splitting, extreme dissociation, even acting out behaviors. And usually these defenses, they're pre-verbal. Going back to Christopher Bolles' idea of the unthought known, and they protect against this experience of nameless dread. What do you think of that idea? And can you find that within yourself?
Is that like a consistent state of unhappiness, the nameless dread part?
Can be. Yeah. Deeper than that, though.
When it's a nameless dread, would it be a state of hopelessness?
Could be. Yeah.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Yeah. Dread is an interesting concept. Some of you might remember Dr. Bland, Earl Bland. He was here for a number of years and left about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, but was in the position that I hold currently. We wrote a paper together. He mostly wrote it. I kind of wrote his coattails, but we explored this idea of dread. And dread is sort of this edge of a primitive experience that kind of puts you in a place of hopelessness or helplessness. And we all have it. We all experience dread. We put a number of, I was joking with my wife, actually just the other day, and I was saying this tongue in cheek, but I think it illustrates the point. I had this little scuff on a new pair of sneakers. I couldn't get the scuff out. And I handed it over to her, and it's like, hey, can you help me get this scuff out? Because she's got the touch, and so she was kind of working on it. And I was like, I really need to keep my sneakers clean because it keeps me from thinking about the reality that everything is meaningless.